So they had printed up some paper applications for McDonald's here on the counter, and the manager was here, Nick, and him and another manager were talking about how much they're struggling because they have no help. And I talked a little bit. They'd already talked. Him and another couple other managers asked me about what I had done when I worked at McDonald's and encouraged me to apply. So I filled out the application, and he's going to do the job interview tomorrow. They already know my history, complicated history, and I'm hoping that this McDonald's franchise chooses to not go along with the false history and false criminal allegations by basically two previous employers under criminal allegation, meaning the Peoria McDonald's franchise, possibly corporate, and then Chad Cronin, who's an attorney, who's in bed with the Iran-Contras. He was a DOJ attorney, as was Virginia Goldwater Piper. I don't think, she didn't say she was a DOJ attorney, she said she worked for DOJ. And earned her meritorious star by testifying before Congress about the appropriate application of affirmative action in the military. So she knows better. Now, they've still got their boneheaded private ICE agents stalking me at the store. If this store hires me and they're still doing that, that takes the criminality by ICE and the former McDonald's franchisee and McDonald's corporate to a whole new level. If I have to call police on them while I'm working on my shift, don't be surprised if Essex PD doesn't roll up and ask if they want to be, if they want them, we want them to no trespass them. And I'm quite sure the current two night managers will do exactly that. Now, that's not bad publicity for McDonald's because the private ICE agents are acting on behalf of corrupt McDonald's. That gives Mr. Napoli a hell of a lot of leverage. He's got, I think they said 72 stores or 80 stores, or I think a lot of damn stores all over Vermont, New Hampshire, probably Maine and Massachusetts. I don't remember what the other states were. I think his main office is in Massachusetts. That's going to make him a national hero. That's public relations. That's priceless public fucking relations that you can't buy. To be able to no trespass undercover ICE agents. Now, Michaela, whose husband works for Homeland Security, aka ICE, aka Border Patrol, if he's involved, he needs to recuse himself. He needs to say, look, I've been lied to. I'm an officer of the court. I ain't having nothing more to do with this shit. This will be a real test of his integrity. He's either going to stand by his spouse. If he's a true Christian, he's going to stand by his spouse and her employer, or what? Go to prison with the people behind Iran-Contras who indicted Caspar Weinberger, the former mayor, Burlington mayor's son, and be affiliated as one of the attorneys using these private ICE agents to stalk me, one of which was charged by the Chittenden County State's attorney for stalking the mayor, for the new progressive mayor, for over a year. I don't think Mr. Napoli wants that bad publicity associated with his franchise. Because every single one of these employees, I don't think that subpoenaing them and compelling them to testify, like when they gave me that invalid, it wasn't even a no trespass. It was saying you can't camp here and all that stupid note. Coolsey and the sheriff's department didn't even need it. You know why? Because they had surveillance. They watched them do it. They probably watched them type it up, probably watched them plan it out in their texts and their emails and their audio surveillance. And there's video cameras all over the store. Whatever happened here in person was captured on the surveillance, which the independent investigators are tapped into. Most of them are pretending to be corrupt and going along with McAfee and the corrupt supervisor at BPD. They're pretending to go along with Piper, just like my father is. And quite possibly my mother and her relatives. But I don't know that for a fact. They can blow their cover. If that's the case, they can blow their cover when they're ready. Apparently my cousins have little kids. They like to smoke pot. They don't want the kids taken away or killed, like my cousin Sean and my Uncle Alan and my Uncle Bob and Uncle Daryl, and incarcerated like my Uncle Roger, who didn't get pardoned, unlike Roger Clinton. So what I'm saying is, it's going to be and why the hell would I want to go to work for McDonald's after all they've put me through? Because I'm, first of all, McDonald's has always been my safe space. All my life, I've been a trafficking victim. And it was always where I went to get a shake or fries to comfort myself. I knew I would be treated well there because customers always right. You treat your customers like royalty because they're job security. And the only one that was that I didn't like, that was very nasty, was the Buffalo store that was near where I lived. They were hateful. Even hired a security guard. If you charged your phone up for a few minutes, they fucking threatened criminal charges. It was just grimy. Whoever owned, and it wasn't the employees. Well, some of them were. Some of them were just nasty and hateful. But I mean, that was they probably Byron Brown's and Val Deming's cronies and Eric Adams' people. I don't know. But yeah, they were the only ones who weren't accommodating. And I'm like, I'm stage 4 cancer. I can't eat in 30 minutes and get the hell out. I may eat something and then wait, make sure I can handle it, and then eat again. Snap a neck and just being fucking nasty. It's just stupid. I'm like, lady, I live right around the corner. You treat me like I'm just some homeless piece of shit. Well, once they hired the security, she was nice. And she was like, Miss Moore, you take your time. We got to chatting about something. I said, yeah, I live right around the corner. But I had a backpack with me because it's like I don't carry a purse. If I have to go shopping at Family Dollar, or there was a Family Dollar, I think, right across the street from it. It was just right there on the same street. They were really close to each other. I don't think they were right next to each other, but they were very close to each other. And I'm like, I have shopping to do. And the time we didn't have these reusable shopping bags. So we got to chatting, and she says, if I'm here, you take your time and you stay here as long as you want. And at the time, I was still pretty sick. You could look at me and see I wasn't well. Um, I was severely bloated, really having trouble breathing. But anyway, if they offer me a job and we figure out how to get me an ID so I can start work, that's like full circle. I got the job at McDonald's in Peoria while living with my mother in her $1 million home, though they were renting. It was still, if it were sold today, it'd probably be worth $1.5 million. In a, it wasn't really a gated community; it was a homeowners association. Everybody had to like, it was really nice houses. Um, all the yards were not really, most of them weren't grass, they were rocks, but they had a lot of nice plants, and it was so you didn't have to mow the yard in 140-degree heat. A lot of coyotes, a lot of rabbits, a lot of quail, a lot of very pretty birds. Um, it was a nice space, but she was still an adult child of an alcoholic, and I just couldn't. And her husband was a millionaire, and you're not my responsibility. I'm fucking dying of cancer here, motherfucker. He's a, they're Jim Crow clan, so I'm not even gonna relive that. But I wanted my own money, and I really went to work at McDonald's so I could pay a GYN to see what the hell was causing all the problems. Even mom noticed I was hemorrhaging a lot. And instead of getting me to a doctor, they bitched about, well, how you ain't paying for it. You're a fucking millionaire. Like $200 for a GYN visit to find out what was going on was gonna kill him? No, die, bitch. Those are some motherfuckers who want money and power more than they care about humanity. And he's an autistic savant, too. He wrote he graduated, he was the valedictorian of Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. A literal rocket scientist, aerospace engineer, and he wrote the software for the mainframe computer on the International Space Station. At the time, he was an independent contractor writing microprograms for some new company, but prior to that, actually, I think he was working for what used to be Southwest Airlines. Then they bought American, then they bought Delta, and then DOJ puffed up and made a big stink about a monopoly. But everything else was a monopoly. They only have problems with monopolies when they're not getting a cut. Or it was just posturing to make it look like they were doing oversight on monopolies. Just like Rudy Giuliani pretended to investigate Barry Goldwater Jr. and then Democrat Charles Wilson for sex abuses and getting high on their own Iran-Contra supply under Reagan. Meanwhile, Rudy Giuliani was getting drunk and high on their own supply. He conveniently said he couldn't find enough evidence to indict. But anyway, they were a fucking toxic mess. And I ended up downtown at the shelter, which is where I met Piper. And I would travel by bus. Took several, I think a couple of hours for me to get from downtown Phoenix all the way out to Peoria, and then I had to walk 1.5 miles to get to the damn store. Which I think was Union Hills Parkway. And then they showed their, and then that franchisee showed his F. And so it's like, I loved the job. It was clean as you learned what you needed to do. I was closing. I had a routine. I did the drive-through orders and took the money, and then up front they filled them and did all that, and I had a lot of fun. So much fun. I got commended for making every single customer laugh on Christmas Eve when it was absolutely insane busy because we were right near the mall and a bunch of shopping centers. Everybody was out doing their last minute Christmas shopping for presents and everything they needed to cook their food the next day. So we stayed slammed right up until close. That's because the general manager wasn't usually there when I came to work. When I came to work, they were usually gone or on their way out. That they were so busy that day. She was still there, and she was in the office, which was where I stood to take orders. The door was just right behind me, so she heard everything. I didn't even know she was there. I was so busy. And anyway, I just loved working there. And there was a discrimination claim, but it wasn't really against the employees that were cutting up and embarrassing the customers with like really nasty, like racial or gay. I don't even remember what it was. I think they were saying faggot, FAGGOT, this and a whole lot of other crap that was so loud the customers heard it out the window. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. And I mentioned it, and I was like, I can't work like that. That was humiliating to me. It was humiliating to the customers, and I don't even think they were LGBTQ or whatever. So eventually I had to meet with him at a different store. My mother was there recording everything, and his reaction is what landed him the damn charge. If he'd have just said, I'm so sorry, uh, I've talked to them and they're apologetic and this and that and the other and whatever. You can't claim that I was just trying to sue for money because that's not how it works with discrimination. If the EEOC files charges and they found that you committed discrimination, you get sensitivity training. The only time you get a right to sue letter to give to an attorney who can't even sue your employer unless you get that right to sue letter is if they fire you and do a bunch of dumb stuff, which is exactly what he did. Oh, and by the way, Virginia G. Piper of Honor Health and Homeland Security also worked at the EEOC. So she took over the investigation, not only to cover his ass, but her own ass on her own discrimination. She was using me as an investigator, right along with Chad, and neither one of them were paying me. And then saying, oh, well, you're a convicted felon. Well, you're the one that made sure I got convicted. You went after me as your child sex trafficking victim instead of going after Beasley and Darla Munoz Natoloi, whose father was part of that abuse against me and false criminal allegations against my father, and sent me to prison with cancer to hide the systemic unbundling and upcoding Medicaid fraud. So the gaslight was just off the charts. That's why I really don't think Mom and Meredith and Mary are undercover. I think they're just adult children of alcoholics and or still drinking and drugging themselves and still trying to blame all their abuses strictly on my father and whatever. But all of that aside, for now 13, 14 years later, I'm getting the cancer treatment, albeit off the record, because it's part of a sealed criminal investigation, not only into my child abuse, but other child abuses that it's actually happening at social services and the hospitals, to go back to work. and especially at twice as much as what I was making back then. I think the minimum wage then was $7.80 an hour, or $7.85 maybe. Might have been $7.50. Florida might have been $7.85. Well, here I think the Vermont minimum wage is $13.50, but they may start. They say they can start you it up to $18 an hour. I'm not gonna. Either way, I win. I'll be happy with $14 an hour. I prefer more than that just for bragging rights, but um, actually, I'm going to say I would prefer more than that to begin with because it will help me get on my feet. Plus, at some point, they're going to have mega public relations that they will get, this franchisee will get, once the state of New York and the state of Vermont decide to go public with my case as a whistleblower and trafficking victim of Epstein's partners in crime. So, and that's what I mean by converting liabilities into assets. I don't care what crimes Mr. Napoli might have been, I don't care what violations he might have. What was it? There's some health violations or whatever, maximizing profits. Most of that will probably be civil stuff that he can settle with whoever. It's much more important that his franchise make things right for whatever they did in the past, and most importantly, take it to the next level, hire me, and then change things for all employees and franchisees. Any franchisee who decides to open a McDonald's or Taco, they're going to have to mistreat their employees but gotta focus everything on the drive-through because that's the biggest money maker and yada yada yada, and not hire enough staff that everybody's busting their ass. And can't keep up. I mean, when you have a situation where you have people's health in your hands, like a food service, and if you reset a timer that you shouldn't, that food should be thrown out, you should be putting fresh stuff in there, it's important to have enough staff. So people aren't doing that, and then people like me are constantly getting food poisoning. I mean, this franchise could be an invaluable asset to this investigation, which isn't just, I mean, of course it's the child stuff, but it's also just the regular human trafficking, the violations against workers. Of course, all of that, I can't decide that. I have no control over that. That would mostly be the prosecutors who decide that. But I do have what's called a victim's impact statement. And Mr. Napoli could absolutely earn a good what do I want to call it? Get honorable mention along with all of his regional manager, his district manager, his store managers. And if Mr. Michaela, for lack of better words, decides to cut ranks with the corrupt ones and start protecting his wife and his family with Mr. Napoli and breaking free, going against the Epstein thing, he could save his career as a